Welcome to this week's episode of Success in Women, the show that's about helping women, supporting women, and doing whatever we can to make sure women succeed. This is Andrea.
And this is Linda. So Linda, before we get started, I noticed you have a beautiful new picture on the back of your wall. Good choice.
Well, speaking of choices, Andrea, I know I had a blank wall and I chose to finally put something there because you were staring at a blank wall. I know you can only see part of the picture, but today's episode is all about making choices. And in life, ladies, you're given this from the time you were younger, and if your parents were actually really getting you to learn about making choices, you started picking out your own clothes probably at a very early age.
And it's funny you said that because I had 3 daughters and they all had their own style. And my middle child always wanted to wear the fanciest dresses to school, thinking it was a party. And I actually got a call from the teacher once and said, "You know, Mrs. Aquila, your daughters do not have to wear dresses to school." And I said, I think I know that, but my daughter wants to, so that's her choice, and I'm fine with it. If anything's wrong with the dress, don't worry about, playing with crayon or anything. I'll deal with it when she gets home. So it was her choice, and eventually when grade 2, when they had to go out for recess, and it was cold, then she decided to wear pants. But that was her choice, and I let her make it. What was the big deal?
So you started your kids very young at actually allowing them to pick their clothes. I heard a story one time, and sometimes where parents go wrong, and I am not a parent, I've mentioned this before, I don't have any children, but I'm always listening and I watch other people with children.
Right.
And sometimes they would let their child go pick something to wear to school, and then the parent says, "No, that's not a good choice." And what happens is that you're actually undoing, because now a lot of people can't make decisions. And
I'll tell you how to remedy that, because that did happen also with one of my children. So what I did was, because some things are just not appropriate for school. So what I started doing was putting 2 outfits that I felt were appropriate on the bed, either the night before or the morning, and say, "Okay, these are your choices, pick one." And that worked.
And that helps your child learn to make decisions.
That's
because
right.
Otherwise, if you keep saying no after you've told them to go pick out a toy,
That's
pick
right.
out some clothes, and you tell
You're
them
knocking down their confidence and
Right.
their self-esteem. Absolutely.
and that actually is really, I like the way you put that, because we've talked about that self-esteem. Sometimes people will have low self-esteem, and you don't, as a parent, don't even realize you were contributing to that.
Absolutely.
By shooting down their choices.
Criticizing their choices. Right. That's one thing I was very conscious of when I was bringing up the girls, and trying to figure out ways to help them become independent and their own person, and not to be like me or their sister or a friend. And I tried as best as I could in any which way to help them do that. And it's like the saying with the saying no. A lot of parents say no to this, no to that. No, you can't get a piercing. No, you can't color your hair. No. And somebody had told me many years before that, when they ask something, and it's, a little like coloring your hair, ask yourself, in 5 years, will this be something that will affect them? And if it isn't going to, like a haircut or hair coloring or even ear piercing, then let them do it. It's not going to change their life or ruin their life. Now, if it's something that can alter what they're going to be doing in 5 years or down the road, like if they want to get tattoos on their face or piercing in their nose, that might affect them 5 years down the road when they go for job interviews or even a lifetime partner. So I'd always think about the question before I just went ahead and said no, because then you know, you might give in later and then you look like the wishy-washy. And I didn't want that either. I wanted them to know when I said no, I meant no. And I thought about it.
Yeah. What's really interesting, I've mentioned this before, that I listen to Dr. Laura quite a bit because I like hearing about situations that people have and Dr. Laura's answers. But one of the things, Andrea, I mean, it's like, I know you're not a trained psychologist like she is, or psychotherapist, or whatever it is that she actually is to deal with people's problems, but you have so much, you're so intuitive when it comes to stuff like that, because even one of the things that you said, will it affect your child in the next 5 years? And if the answer is no, then you know what? Why not, if that's their choice, let them have it. There was a caller that called in last week, and she said, I have such a hard time making decisions, that she said, I see now that it's affecting my adult children. And what's interesting about that is that Dr. Laura basically said exactly what you did, which is, when you're making a decision, and she's telling this as an adult woman now, she's talking to this adult woman with adult children, and she's got to undo all the years of her indecisiveness, anyway. She has a hard time making decisions. And so what Dr. Laura was saying, what's the outcome? Is it something that you can live with?
Right.
Because if you can live with that, and so, yeah, maybe it's not going to be the best situation, but if you know that you can live with it, what's the difference? Make the decision and stick with it.
Exactly. And, that's like in anything in life, like, when kids are, my daughters were after high school going on to second education, what they wanted to do, they had to make a decision. And one of the things I said, or they would say, well, so-and-so's going here and so-and-so's going, well, don't worry about where other people are going. What is it that you want to do? Where do you see yourself after university? And then sit down and pick out the university that best suits your needs and to get you to your goal. And that's how we sort of did it. Now, my one daughter didn't want to go to university. She wanted to be a dance teacher or a dancer. And then in Toronto, we have a school that's sort of like Juilliard's in New York, but it's in Toronto. And she wanted to go there. And my husband was like, oh, she should be going to university. And I said, but Ed, if your son wanted to be an electrician, you wouldn't send him to woodworking school. You'd send them to become an electrician or work for apprentice with an electrician. My daughter wants to be in the dance world. So I said, we have to give her this. And we did. And it was the right choice for her. She knew it. I knew it. Dad finally saw it. And that's how she makes her living. She's a wonderful dance teacher. And she's happy. And she thanks me every day saying, I get up and do what I love every day.
And when you get up doing what you love every day, it's not a job.
Exactly.
It's not work, because that's something you're passionate about.
Right.
And I'm not sure we've talked about it, but we might have to on a future episode. But one of the things that a lot of times when I've had a really difficult decision, and I know I have to make it, I do what's called the Ben Franklin decision making.
Oh.
And what you do is you get a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle, and you put all the reasons why you should do it on one side and all the reasons why you shouldn't do it on the other side. And what happens in the end is that one side is going to be larger than the other. Mm-hmm. If you're really true to yourself and you put all the reasons why you want to go forth with this decision and all the reasons why you shouldn't, your decision basically will be there in black and white.
Oh.
And the interesting thing, besides that, when you do that and combine it with your intuition, your gut will tell you.
Yes. So that's so true.
So recently, I have this friend, and they were deciding to buy a vacation property. So this property was just the land, and they were going to have to build, and it was going to be in another country. So they were on vacation there, and they had gone there a couple of times, and they really liked the area, and they had this opportunity to buy this property. and the person that was selling the property was developing a number of lots, so they were going to help them with getting the builders and the design and everything else. But something kept holding her back. And even though she made the deposit because she wanted to go forth, she was back and forth between her and her husband, and then she would call me to discuss, should she do it? Should she do it? And bottom
how
line,
can you answer that?
and exactly, I had never been there, but the point is, no matter what, because it is an investment, but it was going to be, I'm going to say, their retirement snowbirding type place to go. But something was holding her back, and she had something in her gut, not making it easy to make the decision, but she didn't want to lose the particular property she was choosing, so she made the deposit. And lo and behold, she should have just listened to her gut and not made the deposit, because she did lose the deposit. She had to back out. Believe it or not, her husband took ill very shortly after.
Oh no.
And they can't make those kind of future plans.
Oh.
He may get to recover, but we don't know at this point.
Right.
But it would have been a big undertaking, because they would be obligated to start building sooner than they would be ready.
Right.
And the thing is, when your gut is telling you,
And isn't that what Oprah says all the time?
yeah,
Trust your intuition. Trust that little voice in the back of your head that says, maybe you better think about that.
Dr. Laura says the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember many, many years ago, another friend of ours, we skipped going to our school dance because we're teenagers and we allowed ourselves to get picked up. They had a hockey team in our city, these young guys that were there. And these are young, older teenagers, but still teenagers that are with chaperones, but not their parents, and had a little bit too much latitude.
Oh.
So anyway, we thought, oh, good looking guys, we're walking towards going to our school dance, and we ended up letting ourselves get picked up.
Bad choice?
Bad choice. Because we came this close to getting raped. And
Oh my
I
goodness.
look at that now, and I had an uneasy feeling, but my friend really wanted to, and I thought, well, what could happen? I mean,
Yeah.
when you're a teenager, you feel like, you've got control of the world, and you've got all the power, and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
But this close.
Wow.
And, I think about it to this
I'm glad
day.
I didn't go with you.
I know.
I must have been at the school dance.
And,
Yeah. Two shoes that I was not.
Yeah, but it's one of those things in life that you do these experiences stupidly because you're not really thinking, you're not making the right decisions, and you're not also listening to your gut.
Yeah.
Because Oprah, as well as Dr. Laura, a lot of these people that influence a lot of other people will always tell you, down here, up here, if there's something nagging.
I know, it was like when I moved to Toronto, like I had a great job in Sudbury, and I was living with a girlfriend, and this opportunity, not super happy, but then my girlfriend came and said, why don't you move to Toronto? Come on. And, I was thinking about it, and I said to myself, why not? And I even talked to my mother. My mother was like, go. And great choice. I packed up that weekend. I said to my mom, you'll have to call the bank and tell them I won't be in on Monday. That was a little tough, but best choice I ever made.
Yeah. And you see, if you make those decisions, and again, look, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I almost now, and it's interesting, I never really thought about it, but anytime I'm making, especially any real decisions that could have some major impact, I always say, in the end, what's the worst that's going to happen? So when I gave up, I used to work for our government, and that's a secure job. You got a pension, you've got benefits, you've got everything. And out of college, I basically went and got a government job, and I hated every moment of it. At the time, though, where I was working as a bookkeeper, this actually was, I think, at least double my income, government. And no wonder they're broke, but because we're overpaid before we even have the experience to do anything. But the point was, I didn't like it, and I spent 8.5 years working at a job that made me miserable. And eventually I decided, a friend of mine actually saw an ad to go into sales. And I didn't know if I would make it or not. And I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen? If I don't like it, I just look for another job. I felt confident in myself that I could support myself regardless of whether or not I gave up the secure job. My mother was quite concerned because
As all parents would be.
yeah, because I was going strictly on commission. There was no
Right.
salary, no benefits.
Well,
And-
like Eddie, he had a secure job as an accountant, and his father was very proud that he had that job, and he was miserable. And along came a friend with an offer to start up the construction home building, and we both talked about it, and we made the choice to do that, and it was the best choice he made for himself because he was happy. And his father got used to the idea eventually, but that's what he wanted to do in life, and it was a good choice for him that he made.
And see, that was the same with me.
Yeah.
I felt it was right. I felt like I was going to be successful, and we had
You have a sense of belonging, don't you? Like,
When
this
you-
is where I belong in this
Right.
world. You know, that
Yeah.
and that's, you know, like my daughter, she had the sense that she needed to be in the creative world, the dancing world. You know, Eddie wanted to be in that own your own business, construction world. You have to think, what is it that you want to do with your life, and what makes you feel good every day.
And that's exactly right, because that's the choices that we have to make.
Mm-hmm.
When you make a choice to settle or to do something that you're really not going to be happy at, what's the point? So when I left, I never looked back. And I looked at some of my friends that stayed with the government or other jobs, and I knew that they were miserable, but they stayed because they were going to have a pension.
I know.
And I'm like, yeah, but I'll say at least a third of your life is going to be spent in misery going there so you can collect a pension.
But then you're not even just miserable at your job, because
You can
it
take it home.
carries itself to home. You come home, you're tired because you're miserable, and then the family suffers, and everything else around you suffers. When you're happy and you come home and your life is full of joy, it makes a big difference.
Yeah,
Big difference.
I always tell people I retired many, many years ago when I left the government, because I've never felt like I've worked since.
Wow, that's
Because and I can
fantastic,
work
Linda.
long hours, you
Yeah.
know, and
and I know you do.
yeah, and when I first started, I was working 7 days a week, but it was okay because I loved it.
And I made the choice when I was working. I didn't mind my job. I enjoyed going. But when I had my first daughter, it was a struggle for me to go back to work because I wanted to be home with my daughter. But, you know, all the women were working, and, you know, it's always nice to have a second paycheck. But I said to my husband, this is where we draw the line, because I will work, if that's what you want, a second paycheck with one daughter. I can handle that. But I'm not having a family and going to a job. This is the choice you have to make. I say, because I don't mind working with one child, but I won't have 2, 3 children and drag them off to sitters and go to a job all day for somebody else to raise. And it took him a couple years, but then we finally decided, okay, he wanted to have more children. And the minute I got pregnant, that was it. I left my job, and I have been the happiest woman ever since, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to raise my children and manage my home. And so that was good for me. It's not for everybody, and that's your choice to make.
Right, and it was funny because we were talking about this just before we aired, about the fact women every day have to make these decisions on, do I work once I start a family, or, you know, do I stay home and raise my children? Because that is a career in itself. And, you know, ladies, for the ones that have chosen to stay home and raise their own children, you know how difficult that is, because you're wearing many, many, many hats.
And you sacrifice a lot.
You
know?
do,
We didn't have as much money to spend. We gave up a car.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, you know, people can say, oh, well, maybe you had the money. No, I gave up a lot to stay home with my family. Eventually, I was able to help my husband in his business because I was home with some paperwork and stuff like that. So it did help that way. But we gave up a lot for me to raise my children, and
No regrets.
no regrets at all.
No, and that's the thing, that when you're making it, and it's not necessarily that the woman has to stay home. I mean, if
No.
Andrea, if you had the career, you know, because your husband is such a good parent, I'm sure he would have been quite happy that he would be raising his children.
Well, like my youngest daughter, she loves going to work. She loves animals, not children. But her boyfriend always said, "Oh, I'll stay home with the children," and she says, "Great idea." So that might happen down the road. I don't know.
But again, it's a choice you make.
That's
but
right.
But go with your gut.
And don't let other people influence you.
That's another good point.
If it's good for you, then do it. And your husband. Of course, if it's a family decision, it's a family decision.
Right.
But make sure everybody's happy. Everybody wins. You know?
Yeah, it's got to be a win-win.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Anyway, we could go on and on and on, because making decisions is part of everyday life. Not just once in a while. You're making decisions every day, even when it's, what am I going to make for dinner? You know, it just doesn't end.
No.
But we're going to end it here, but we wanted you to think about the decisions you make and how you can do that. Making the Ben Franklin, drawing the paper and coming up with everything, using your gut
Yes.
instinct, you know, talking to the rest of the family members that are going to be impacted.
Or
But
someone who's done it before, and
Yeah, even with that.
how were they happy with their choice?
Yeah.
If you know someone that had to make that decision at some point.
So this is the end of this week's episode. Please tune in and don't forget,
Subscribe, please.
share, we
And
appreciate
like.
it. And like.
Sorry.
That's okay. This is Andrea.
And this is Linda.
We're signing off for this week. We'll see you soon.
Have a great week, ladies.